The music industry has been completely upended by shocking reports that Jones and Camron, the two mainstays of Dipset, have been arrested after a violent incident backstage that left security dumbfounded. What was supposed to be a joyous reunion concert devolved into an all-out brawl, leaving spectators stunned and the hip-hop community in complete astonishment, according to numerous reports. Yes, you heard correctly. A conflict broke out between two ex-brothers in arms, with fists thrown, harsh words exchanged, and complete anarchy in the wake, according to witnesses. Within minutes, what began as a furious dispute over the performance order turned into something considerably more sinister, complete with smashed equipment, shattered egos, and flashing police lights. As cameras rolled, Cameron and Jim were reportedly handcuffed and taken away. Fans were startled, with many questioning, is this really the end of Dipset? Stay tuned, because what's about to happen isn't just shocking. It's the reason why two icons had such a public meltdown. Kind of unfiltered, heartbreaking drama that nobody anticipated, and believe us, this is just the beginning. It all began on a night that was meant to be a celebration for fans. Had flocked to see the long-awaited reunion of Freaky Zekey, Jim Jones, Juelz Santana, and Dipset Camron. The place was a hive of nostalgia, crowded with people talking about how these musicians influenced a whole period of hip-hop while sporting vintage Dipset merchandise and listening to classic songs on their phones. But no one realized that around midnight, rumors started to circulate that the tension that had been building behind the scenes for weeks was about to explode in a way that would completely alter everything. It was first difficult to understand what was happening due to shaky cameras, fuzzy faces, muffled shouts, and frenzied social media posts. But soon after, video snippets from Backstage began to surface. A fierce argument between Ron and Jim Jones was captured on camera, and it involved more than just words. Chairs were overturned, equipment was broken, and voices were raised to deafening heights. The recording showed two brothers who were once inseparable fighting just minutes before they were scheduled to share the stage together, and viewers found it hard to believe. According to shocked, perplexed, and devastated sources, the altercation started over such as, Jim Jones reportedly planned to start the event with his little, inconspicuous tweak. Cameron requested they stick to a traditional Dipset, although he did a solo song called We Fly High. Track how a small argument turned into a major conflict as Jim's old scars were reopened. Accused Cam of constantly attempting to dominate the spotlight, and Cam retaliated by accusing Jim of being disloyal and going it alone when the group was disintegrating and things rapidly got out of hand. The room was crowded with security personnel, stylists, and others who were all attempting to settle things down, but neither man was renouncing the insults, which escalated into. One crew member described how the sheaves and shaves turned into punches, saying it was like observing a family fall apart in front of us. The altercation was not only physical, but also emotional, with both males yelling things. Jim allegedly yelled, "You left me out," after it had been evidently buried for years. "To dry when I most needed you." Cam retorted, "You've always been envious of me." Those who were admitted. People close to the group claim that even though they had previously made amends in public, their differences were never really resolved. Tonight, behind closed doors, all of the forced interviews and artificial grins came to an end. Within seconds, as the mayhem broke out backstage, the crowd in front were. People were getting agitated since the event had been postponed for more than an hour, and they were chanting without knowing what was going on. They had no idea the police had arrived, and that their favorite performers were being handcuffed only a few feet away. One of the employees was nabbed when security called to report a violent incident that had hurt 2 others. When police arrived on the scene, they discovered that the other person had a sprained wrist from attempting to separate Cam and Jim. The video of their arrest showed the 2 rappers, who were clearly bruised, continue screaming at one another. Swiftly went viral as a crew member saw Cameron being led out in handcuffs, his face flushed with wrath, by Jim Jones. Soon after, his voice was torn by his chain as he shouted to the mob outside. As the 2 were escorted into separate police cars, the audience stared in shock. While some fans yelled their names and pleaded with them to stop, others simply captured the event in stunned silence on camera. When media sites picked up the story, what was supposed to be a joyous comeback had instead become a nightmare. Minute stories such as Cameron and Jim Jones, and the chaotic conclusion of the Dipset reunion. Arrested following a backstage altercation, and social media users started posting old videos of the pair laughing together, in interviews recalling their relationship and contrasting it with the recent catastrophic fallout the betrayal felt. Many fans raised us personally, as one Twitter user stated, "We grew up on Dipset. Our big brother seems to be battling right now." Reactions were all over the internet, with some people being startled, some furious, and inside the jail that night, Jim and Cam didn't speak to one another, despite some people saying they could have predicted this. Despite the prompt arrival of their legal teams, they were placed in different holding cells, and the harm had already been done. According to those with knowledge of the matter, both guys were affected not only by the battle, but one insider revealed how far they have actually fallen. Cam just sat with his head while Jim continued to pace and ask how it got to this point. The quiet that followed the storm was more powerful than any blow ever could have. Could Juelz Santana, who was apparently trying to get ready in his dressing area when the altercation started, mediate once he noticed that things were becoming hot? But by the time he got there, someone in Juelz, one of the crew, yelled, "After everything we've been through, not like this man." Through. As he witnessed 2 of his best friends being hauled away by cops, the sight tormented him and his voice broke. According to insiders, he broke down backstage and needed his team's comfort. As a result, sponsors immediately withdrew their support. Following the tour, music promoters started reassessing upcoming Dipset events when fans sought refunds. Industry experts speculated that since they were already on thin ice, this might be the last nail in the coffin. Promoter, social media has just made the drama lovers more fervent, so this could be the end. Discussed who was at fault, with some condemning Cameron of being overbearing and others accusing Jim of being aggressive and insecure. But regardless of the side that people took, the consensus was clear Dipset, since we were aware that it might be completed, but even in the middle of. Other artists used social media to share their sorrow and hope for peace amid the chaos. "Come on, dip up, you guys are bigger than this. Fix it before it's too late," said one message about reconciliation. Late. Another said, "Hip-hop needs you all together, not split apart like this." However, as the dust settled and the city attempted to determine whether or not Cam and Jim would hear those words, as everyone processed what had just transpired, one thing was certain: nothing would ever be the same again. At the height of the drama, an unexpected event occurred the following morning, and as everyone believed the drama had peaked, an unexpected event occurred the following morning, and a leaked. A message purportedly from Jim Jones started making the rounds on the internet immediately. Jim's voice in the message, taken hours after the battle while he was still being held, was extremely worn out and in agony. He talked carefully, as though each word had weight. "I'm not even angry at Cameron," he continued, "but rather at ourselves for allowing them." "We let Dipset down, fans." Nobody was able to verify if the audio was authentic initially took up like wildfire, and by midday, prominent hip-hop websites were reposting it with captions such as, "The end of Dipset hits harder than we thought," and "Jim Jones regrets everything." Fans were divided. Hearing the remorse in his voice, some felt sorry for him, while others wondered if the voicemail was a strategic tactic to win over the public. But behind the scenes, nobody could have predicted how crazy things were. Cameron had not made any public statements, sent any tweets, or posted any tales on Instagram. According to those close to him, he was incensed not merely about a mysterious post. He believes Jim is attempting to spin the tale, not only because of the fight, but also because of how fast Jim's group began damage control. According to an insider, Cam feels deceived repeatedly in the story. Juelz Santana started contacting both in an effort to prevent everything from falling apart entirely. Cam's luring them into a meeting to discuss and resolve the issue, but neither Jim nor Cam was prepared, but they were both too emotionally invested and overwhelmed by years of unsolved conflict, even for freaky Zekey, who had always been the comic relief, fell silent, and his team issued a brief statement expressing his profound sadness about the incidents and urging supporters to provide the gang time to recover. But the fact that the combat had not only impacted Dipset, but had also opened hip-hop musicians who had previously admired the group started to open out about old scars in the culture. Some expressed dismay, some shared tales of previous conflicts they had personally experienced, and one anonymous. In a blog post, the producer claimed to have witnessed Cam and Jim quarrel about money years prior. During a recording session, the brotherhood that had been eroding for a while abruptly lost its appearance of oneness. Everything Dipset had attempted to maintain came crumbling down, and then came. Late that evening, a fresh clip from the venue's backstage security camera was leaked. In contrast to the unlike other fan film footage, this one captured the moment in stunning, clear detail. Jim swung back and knocked over a table after Cameron pushed him into a stack of speaker cases, as shown in the video. It was quiet, but the brutality was evident, and fans were appalled to witness their icons act in this manner. Further video showed crew personnel rushing to break up the altercation when Juelz entered. A security guard pushed Cam back against a wall as he attempted to drag Jim away. Internet hashtags like #CamShim and #DipSetDownfall were rekindled by the footage. Started trending news sites, which used it to analyze each frame as if it were a sports. Experts in recall body language even comment that Cam's posture revealed deeply ingrained annoyance when Jim's actions demonstrated emotional instability. It became into media circus memes became viral, and people asked for interviews and even appeared on television shows. Began referring to the altercation as the week's most significant pop culture event, but the repercussions behind the scenes were the label supporting the Dipset tour put everything on hold as it became more real. Contracts were frozen, future dates were canceled, and all reunion-related goods was removed from stores. According to one insider, Jim was held responsible by Cam's crew for the financial catastrophe. Jim's team blamed Cam for calling him, claiming that his outburst had destroyed everything. Manipulative and dominating, and scores of tech crew members and staff dancers were caught in the midst. Then, depending on the tour for employment, all of a sudden losing a position that Cameron was renowned for. 2 days later, his angry clapbacks and caustic tone finally broke his stillness. Fans were moved by his Instagram post of a black screen with a single message that sometimes says more than words. Perplexed, was it acceptance, was it shade, or was it the end of the comments? Speculation erupted. Some pleaded for a ceasefire, while others criticized Cam for being. Jim Jones, in contrast, performed a brief Instagram live stream. "We should be legends, not a headline I'm ashamed of," he remarked in an emotive tone. "I lost my temper, but I'm not alone in that." As anticipated, this only fueled the Firecam supporters' accusations that Jim had gaslighted them. "At least he was owning up," he said in defense of him. And in the middle of all this turmoil, Dipset's legacy was gradually coming apart. Unsure of the public's reaction, radio stations removed Dipset songs from their daily playlists. Podcasts devoted to whole episodes to the altercation, with some claiming that this was the most widely reported group breakdown since MUA. Others made comparisons. One host stated in the fall of June, "This is what happens when ego goes left unchecked too long." That in the most unexpected turn of events, a woman came forward and said she had seen. She claimed that the altercation was about a lady, and that neither Cameron nor Jim Jones had anything to do with music. Romantically associated with the same woman for many years, and new events have rekindled that tension. However, she said Jim found out that Cam had covertly gotten back in touch with her. And that's what started the Backstage dispute. Her story couldn't be verified, but the internet didn't care because it was. Memes that are juicy, scandalous, and precisely the kind of twist that fans love have exploded once more. People made jokes about Dipset being the next reality television drama, while others framed the altercation as a failed love triangle. Voiced dissatisfaction, stating that two legends should never choose a woman over decades of heritage, yet regardless of the veracity of the story, it altered the plot once more, and people weren't simply observing a group disintegrate. They were witnessing the real-time unraveling of lives, and they were unable to turn away. By this point, Jim and Cam were both free on bond, but under the irony that two men who had been ordered by a court to keep apart until the case was settled wasn't lost on anyone. Once traveled the world together, but they were unable to be in the same room because damage control teams and lawyers were involved. Putting in extra hours, and the hip-hop scene watched to see what would happen next, according to one seasoned artist. "This is heartbreak, not beef," he said in a radio interview. However, at the exact moment when everything appeared to be at its lowest point, a surprise phone call was placed, one that nobody anticipated, and one that would alter everything going ahead. But as the days went by and everyone awaited it, tensions persisted. Jim Jones and Cameron were battling more than simply a scent behind the scenes. Their own transgression, they were coping with the fallout from their acts, which affected fans, the media, and even their clothes. Although opinions on what had transpired were split, none really understood what lay ahead for Dipset. Could they preserve what remained of their heritage, or had the damage already been done? Beyond repair, Cameron, who is known for his calm manner, had been unusually. His social media sites, which were typically full of jokes and cryptic remarks, had become silent following the incident. Uncomfortably quiet supporters, especially those who had been with him for years, were beginning to worry because they had never seen Cameron acting in this manner before. He was always the one to trivialize a situation to transform tragedy into something amusing, but this time, his posts lacked humor. In fact, he wasn't even posting this. Though Jim Jones was more outspoken on Twitter, his silence spoke more than any words he could have spoken. Was replete with remarks expressing regret to supporters for the incident. Supporters, including Cameron, "It's been a difficult journey, but I'm growing," and he tweeted, "growing," but some followers weren't really persuaded and instead commended him for admitting his errors, while others said it was just a ploy to win back the affection he had lost from real men. One fan added, "Exceed when they're wrong, but that doesn't erase the reality that the damage is done. And we won't forget what occurred. Jim and the conflicting responses simply served to stoke the flames." There was a sense of inevitable outcome despite the drama and public divide, but the key question was still, with Dipset's permanent slit hanging over everything, was this the end of one of the most recognizable hip-hop groups of all time? There were constant rumors that Camron and Jim Jones hadn't spoken in days, according to some sources. Fans were divided as some suggested that a reunion would happen, but only if specific requirements were fulfilled. Others felt betrayed, while others continued to believe in the group's strength and the connection that had united them years before. Their allegiance was completely shattered, but Juelz Santana, who had always. Sources close to him claimed that Juelz, who served as the mediator between the two, was caught in the middle of. Angry and wounded by the whole thing, he had spent so much time trying to maintain harmony between Jim and Cam, and now it appeared like all of that effort was failing, but he was still frustrated. Juelz was committed to putting things right since he understood that the first step in any prospect of reconciliation was. Juelz decided to take matters into his own hands and contacted Camron, and Jim Jones was working alone to set up a private meeting that he thought was necessary. Face-to-face, no more mysterious letters or phone calls. It had to be genuine. Juelz was prepared to go to any lengths to salvage Dipset, and following a few anxious days, Juelz was able to obtain both Camron and the first time Jim Jones was in the same room. It was a historic occasion. Since the altercation, the two had decided to talk, but the tension was high when they eventually sat together. Jim Jones, who was known for his quick wit and caustic tone, was remarkably quiet, but was more forthcoming. He had been considering the repercussions of his conduct and was prepared to confront. The two men sat in an awkward stillness that pervaded the entire room. Opposite one another, the burden of their past and current repercussions looming large in the background, Camron shattered the silence with a steady voice that had an unmistakable edge. "You know, Jim," he began slowly, "after what happened, I never imagined I'd be sitting here with you. You treated me disrespectfully, and in front of hurting family members as well as fans." Jim Jones: "I know, and I can't take it back, but I'm here now," he replied with obvious sadness. "And I want to make things right. I apologize, Cam. I want us to move past this." Camron hesitated. He paused for a long time before answering, perhaps considering his choices. "You mentioned that earlier, Jim, but..." It was evident that there was still a great deal of hurt and mistrust between them, but as the conversation went on, there were times when it appeared as though they could make amends. They reminisced, joked, and talked about their shared past, including the times when Dipset was at the top of the rap game. For an instant, it seemed as though they were once again working together to create magic in the studio, but reality quickly crept in and caused damage. Had been completed, and fans' path to recovery would not be simple in the interim. We're still waiting for Jim Jones and Camron to make a public comment, and the suspense was killing them. They sought clarification on whether Dipset had truly ended or whether the two could gather themselves. Fans flooded social media with requests for an update, saying, "We need to know what's going on." One fan responded, "You both hurt the fans, now you need to," asking whether Dipset was over. The pressure was growing. This needed to be fixed. At last, Camron and Jim Jones were unable to conceal indefinitely. Camron just shared a brief yet impactful remark on Instagram. "We've gone through a lot, and we'll figure it out." Jim Jones followed suit. "Sometimes the strongest ties are put to the test. We've been down too long, but we're stronger," he said in a message of his own genuine speech. then this remains with us, as these communications failed to provide followers with specific responses that offered them hope that perhaps Dipset wasn't finished after all, but the question still stood. Could the fans forgive them for the fight, the public display, and the treachery, or had it been too little, too late? Jim Jones and Cameron went too far, irreparably harming the group. Things will become clearer in the coming days, but for now, everything was uncertain as the hip-hop community kept a close eye on Cameron and Jim Jones as the tale developed. Together, two legends who had formerly dominated the rap scene were now battling for their legacy. Would they succeed? Mend or was Dipset truly over? The hip-hop industry was rocked as the Backstage fight became widely known. Jim Jones and Cameron, two of the original members of the renowned fans media outlets, and the group Dipset were involved in a violent altercation that nobody could have foreseen. Even their colleagues in the industry were shocked when the fight specifics became clear. A night of festivities swiftly descended into mayhem, and it suddenly appeared as though Dipset's future was in jail. The confrontation backstage was reported to have swiftly gotten out of hand due to, according to sources, there have been unresolved problems between the two artists for years. Were discussed, and then there was a violent altercation that resulted in Cameron, and the circumstances surrounding Jim Jones' on-scene arrest were characterized as intense, with witnesses of the incident said that both rappers were punching one another and creating an unavoidable spectacle. That security had to intervene, but the harm was already done by then. The altercation not only affected the event for a long time, but it also left fans pondering whether the two legendary people could ever mend their strained bond in the days that followed. Rumors about what caused the brawl started to go like wildfire, with some claiming it was a personal attack. Disagreement between the two, but others suggested that there were more serious problems within the group. The fans who had previously seen Cameron and Jim Jones, who had been brothers in arms, were now left wondering if they could ever maintain the loyalty that had previously characterized Dipset. Reconnect following this violent public outburst? Or was this the last straw that would cause the group's legacy to cease once and for all? Yet for everyone, some followers continued to have hope, while others used social media to voice their displeasure, saying, "Bye, this is the end of an era." Was the greatest, but what chance do we have if they can't even get along? The similar feelings were expressed in comments as people tried to comprehend the abrupt collapse of one of hip-hop's. Cameron and Jim Jones had been the faces of the most powerful factions for years of Dipset, and now their conflict was tarnishing everything they owned. Constructed Cameron never shied away from controversy and dealt with the matter. He vented his annoyance on social media in a string of messages, saying that although he had made an effort to keep the peace, the treachery he experienced was too much to overlook. Some individuals will never change. Stated, "I did my part, but when you have to watch your back all the time, it's time to move on." His remarks were severe, and they appeared to validate the widespread concern that Dipset as a group was no longer a functioning organization, but even as Cameron's letter appeared to indicate at the end of an era, Jim Jones wasn't prepared to give up just yet. Hand adopted a more reserved demeanor despite his obviously heightened emotions. He wrote on social media that there might be a chance for reconciliation. We've experienced too much together to allow one argument define us," he wrote, adding, "I'm not yet prepared to leave." What he said gave supporters who continued to trust in his and Cameron's relationship optimism that the two titans may find a method to set aside their disagreements and re-establish their shared history, or was the situation irreparable? As events progressed, the media started to comment, with some publications taking sides. Other impartial hip-hop news channels, podcasts, and blogs commented on the drama, with many wondering if this public dispute was a short-term setback or a irreparable fracture. The incident's timing was especially concerning because Dipset had been getting ready to embark on. Fans had been waiting years to see the trio perform live again on a much-anticipated reunion tour, and now it appeared as though the dream was vanishing in an exclusive way. Interviewed Juelz Santana, who is frequently in the center of the arguments between Camron and Jim Jones, talked about this circumstance. He vented his annoyance by saying that he had done everything in his power to maintain harmony between the two, but both men had obviously reached their breaking points. "We were brothers." Man Julian spoke with a lot of heart, but occasionally things change. His words captured the melancholy and an inevitable nature of life. People change, and I can't force something that isn't there anymore. Dipset had been a family in the circumstances, but it now seemed as though that family was. Consequently, the strain on Camron and Jim Jones increased, and the public's reaction to the altercation grew. Intensified, their fan base was split, with some expressing disappointment and rage, and others remaining hoping for a resolution. One fan posted on Instagram, "We need Dipset back together," saying they were the best. Don't let this be your last moment. But as time passed, it grew more and more obvious that there were more serious problems at hand that could not be readily disregarded, or that this wasn't just a small argument, forgotten as Jim Jones and Camron battled to deal with the fallout from. They had to face their personal demons and ancient grievances during the battle. Feelings of betrayal and unsaid hatred started to emerge from what had once a fraternity based on loyalty and trust appeared to be disintegrating due to miscommunication and ego pride. Even the most hopeful fans started to realize that the path to reconciliation would not be simple. To lose hope as things kept getting worse, and in the days that followed, there were suspicions circulating regarding Dipset's future. According to some reports, Camron had already begun working on new songs without Jim Jones, but some implied that he was thinking about going solo, which neither rapper had validated or refuted these claims, but it was evident that the group's future was unclear as time went on. It was clear to fans that Dipset was no longer the dominant force it once was. When Jim Jones and Camron both shared mysterious remarks on social media, it was the last straw. Camron's statement, which confirmed that their working relationship was finished, said, "There are times when you have to let go. It's time to move on, even though there is still love left." Jim Jones shared a similar message. Sometimes acting on their words is more important than being correct. Left admirers devastated, but they also accepted that Dipset was no longer a for group. The consequences of the altercation backstage had been severe, and although Camron and Jim Jones had previously been unbreakable, their battle had demonstrated that even the strongest ties could be severed. And for Dipset devotees, it was the end. In a time that was replete with iconic moments, avant-garde music, and an indisputable cultural impact, but one question remained once the chapter ended on Dipset. Only time will tell if Camron and Jim Jones end up getting back together, but for now it seems as though Dipset had finally had enough of the emotional roller coaster. Fans are in shock about the backstage altercation between Camron and Jim Jones and the future of. With all the drama, betrayals, and heartache, Dipset is unsure about what to do. Do you think Jim Jones and Camron can ever get back together? Or is this the goodbye, Dipset? Please share your ideas in the comments section below. Don't forget to like. If you were taken aback by the dramatic turn of events, watch this video and click the subscribe button for more breaking news. We'll keep you informed of any new information on Cameron Jim Jones and Dipset's future. If you truly love Dipset, you won't want to miss anything that happens next. Press the notification bell to ensure you never miss a tasty update. Continue the discussion, show your friends this video, and let's discuss what went down until the next time. Keep checking back for more drama, updates, and everything. You won't want to miss this buzz from the entertainment industry.